The Starboard Hope was dying. Captain Daniel Mercer stood on the bridge and watched the warning lights flash red across every console. The main engine had failed 6 hours ago. The backup systems had followed 3 hours later. Now, the massive colony ship drifted through the emptiness of the expanse with no power, no propulsion, and no hope. 12,000 people slept in the chambers below. Families, children, scientists and farmers and teachers who had left everything behind to build a new life on a distant world. They had trusted Daniel with their lives, and now he was going to fail them all. "Sir, life support will last another 40 hours, said his first officer, a young woman named Laura. Her voice was steady, but Daniel could see the fear in her eyes. After that. She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Daniel looked out at the stars. The expanse was a lawless stretch of space, far from any major trade routes. Pirates sometimes passed through here, so did worse things. The great empires of the galaxy had long ago decided this region was not worth protecting. Ships that broke down here simply disappeared. "Send out a distress signal," Daniel said. "On all frequencies, wide broadcast." Laura hesitated. "Sir, if pirates intercept it." "Then we die fighting instead of freezing," Daniel replied. "Send it." The signal went out into the darkness. Daniel did not expect an answer. He had been a spacer for 30 years. He knew how the galaxy worked. The strong took what they wanted. The weak suffered. Nobody helped strangers because helping strangers got you killed. He was wrong. The response came 4 hours later. It was not from pirates. It was not from any species Daniel recognized. The message was simple, transmitted in broken but understandable human language. "We are coming. Hold on." The ship that arrived was small and old. Its hull was patched in a dozen places. Its engines wheezed and sputtered as it approached, but it came, and that was more than anyone else in the galaxy had done. The creatures that operated it called themselves the. Daniel had never heard of them. When he looked them up in the ship's database, he found almost nothing. A minor species, traders and scholars, no military, no territory. They survived by staying invisible, by avoiding conflict, by never making enemies. They had no reason to help, every reason to stay away, and yet here they were. The captain was an old creature named. He had gray skin that hung loose on his thin frame, and large dark eyes that seemed to hold centuries of wisdom and sorrow. When he came aboard the Starboard Hope, he moved slowly, carefully, as if the universe might break if he stepped too hard. "Your ship is badly damaged," said. His voice was soft, almost musical. "We cannot repair your engines, but we can take your people. Our vessel is small, but we will make room." Daniel stared at him. "You understand what you're offering. The Dominion patrols this area. If they find you helping humans, they will destroy us," finished calmly. "Yes, we know." "Then why? Why risk everything for people you've never met?" Was quiet for a long moment. His dark eyes studied Daniel's face, reading something there that humans could not see. "Many years ago," said, "my people were travelers. We wandered the stars, trading and learning, harming no one. But we were weak, and the strong do not respect the weak. We were driven from world after world. Many times we nearly died. And in those dark moments, sometimes a stranger would help us. Not for profit, not for power, simply because it was right." He placed one of his long, thin hands on Daniel's shoulder. The touch was gentle, almost weightless. "Those small kindnesses saved us. They gave us hope when we had none. They taught us that the universe is not only darkness." Eyes seemed to glow with an inner light. "We cannot repay those who helped us. They are long dead, their species scattered across the stars. But we can pass their gift forward. We can be the strangers who help, even when it costs us everything." For 3 days, they worked without rest. They transferred colonists from the chambers to their own ship, packing them in so tightly that the crew gave up their own sleeping quarters. They shared their food stores, even though it meant they would go hungry. They guided the Starward Hope through a series of emergency jumps, using their own navigation data to find a safe route to human space. The Dominion never found them. Perhaps they were lucky. Perhaps something else watched over them. Daniel never knew. When they finally reached the edge of human territory, Daniel did not know how to say goodbye. He stood in the airlock watching the star's wheels slowly pass the viewport. "I don't know how to thank you," Daniel said. His voice was rough with emotion. "You saved 12,000 lives. You risked everything. I can't." Held up one hand, stopping him. "Kindness costs little," the old said. "A moment of time, a small risk, a choice to see others as worthy of help. This is nothing." "It's everything," Daniel insisted. "I'll never forget this. My people will never forget this." Smiled. It was a strange expression on his alien face, but somehow Daniel understood it perfectly. "Then perhaps someday," said, "when we are the ones who need help, someone will remember. Someone will choose kindness over safety. That is all we hope for. That is enough." He turned and walked back to his ship. The airlock closed. The quiet passage drifted away, its old engines flickering to life, carrying its crew back into the darkness they called home. Daniel watched until the ship disappeared from sight. Then he turned to Laura, who stood beside him with tears running down her face. "Log everything," he said quietly. "Every detail, every name, every moment of what they did for us." "Sorry." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Because we're going to remember. Humanity is going to remember what they did here. Every child born on this colony will learn the name. Every ship that flies will carry this story." He looked back at the stars, at the endless darkness where a small, fragile species had risked everything for strangers. "Someday," Daniel said, "we're going to repay this debt. I don't know when, I don't know how, but humanity pays its debts, and we never ever forget." The words hung in the air like a promise, like a prophecy. 40 years later, the galaxy would learn exactly what that promise meant. 40 years changed everything. Humanity grew. They built new ships, founded new colonies, and developed technologies that made the older species nervous. They were no longer the small, struggling civilization that had begged for scraps at the edges of galactic society. They had become something else, something that the great empires watched with growing unease. But humanity never forgot where they came from. In every school, children learned the story of the Starward Hope. In every military academy, cadets studied the rescue as an example of true courage. The name was spoken with reverence, like a saint from ancient times. Captain Daniel Mercer had died 15 years after the rescue, passing peacefully on the colony world he had helped found. But before he died, he made sure that humanity's debt to the was written into law. The Protection Accord stated that any threat to the people would be treated as a threat to humanity itself. For 4 decades, the Accord gathered dust. They continued their quiet existence, trading between worlds, harming no one. They were so small, so peaceful, that most species forgot they existed at all. Then the Dominion remembered them. They were conquerors. Their empire stretched across 200 star systems, built on the bones of species they had crushed. They believed that strength was the only virtue, that the weak existed to serve the strong. They had never lost a war, never shown mercy, never failed to take what they wanted. And they wanted Prime. They sat at the intersection of 3 major trade routes. It had been ignored for centuries because they had nothing worth taking. But they had recently discovered something valuable beneath its surface. Something rare. Something worth killing for. The fleet arrived without warning. 70 ships, bristling with weapons, filled the sky above Prime. They had no navy. They had no weapons. They had nothing but a few trading vessels and a prayer that someone somewhere might help them. The commander was a creature named. He was old and he had personally overseen the destruction of 6 species. He found the amusing, such small creatures, such foolish hope in their eyes. "You have 72 hours," broadcast to the planet below. Surrender your world, your resources, and your freedom. Become servants of the Dominion and you will be allowed to live as slaves. Resist, and you will be erased from existence. The council met in their ancient hall, beneath a ceiling painted with the stars they had once wandered. They were scared. They were old, and they had no idea what to do. "We could flee," one council member suggested. "Take our ships and run, find somewhere to hide." "There is nowhere to hide from the Dominion," another replied. "They will hunt us down, they always do." "Then we surrender," a third said quietly. "We become slaves, at least we will live." Silence fell over the chamber. They all knew what slavery meant under their children would grow up in chains. Their culture would be erased. Their people would suffer for generations. But what choice did they have? Far away, 3 star systems distant, a human listening post picked up the broadcast. Lieutenant Commander was on duty when the signal came through. She was young, only 28, but she had grown up on stories of the starward hope. She had written her academy thesis on the rescue. When she heard words, her blood went cold. "Get me Admiral Cole," she said to her communications officer. "Now, priority 1. Admiral Cole was the commander of Earth Fleet. He was 63 years old, a veteran of a dozen battles, and widely considered the most dangerous human being alive. He had gray hair cut short, eyes like chips of ice, and a reputation for never backing down from a fight. When's message reached him, he was in his office on Earth, reviewing fleet deployments. He read the report twice. Then he sat back in his chair and closed his eyes. "Pull up file 774, he said to his computer. "The Starward Hope incident." The screen filled with old images. A broken ship drifting in space. A small vessel approaching to help. A captain named, long dead now, extending his hand in friendship. Had been a young officer when the news of the rescue reached Earth. He remembered the stories. He remembered his father, also a military man, telling him that they had shown humanity what true courage looked like. "They could have let our people die," his father had said. "They should have. It was the smart thing to do, but they helped anyway because it was right. That's the kind of species worth knowing. That's the kind of debt worth paying." Opened his eyes, he looked at the report again. 72 hours, that was all the time they had left. He reached for his communicator. "Get me the Joint Chiefs," he said, "and start recalling the fleet, all of it." His aide hesitated. "Sir, if we pull ships from our defensive positions, we'll be leaving Earth vulnerable." "I know. They have 800 warships. We have 40 currently available, maybe 300 if we strip every colony of protection." "I know. Sir, with respect, this is insane. They are not our people, they're not even our allies. Why would we risk everything for them?" Stood up slowly. He walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Millions of people going about their lives. Children playing in parks, families sharing meals. All of them alive because 40 years ago, a stranger had chosen to help. "Because they saved us," said quietly. "When we were helpless, when we were dying, when nobody in the galaxy gave a damn about 12,000 human beings freezing to death in the void that came. They risked everything. They asked for nothing in return." He turned to face his aide. "They taught us something that day. They taught us that kindness matters, that helping strangers is worth the cost, that the universe doesn't have to be a dark, cruel place where the strong prey on the weak." His voice hardened. "And now those same people, the ones who saved us, are about to be wiped out while the galaxy watches and does nothing, just like they would have watched us die." He picked up his communicator again. "So we're going to go help them. We're going to pay back what we owe, and if they don't like it, they're going to learn something important about humanity." His aide swallowed. "What's that, sir?" Admiral Cole smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "That we never forget a kindness, and we never forgive those who harm the people we love." The message went out across human space. Ships began to move. The largest military mobilization in human history had begun. On Prime, the Council still debated. They did not know that help was coming. They had no reason to hope. But hope was coming anyway, burning across the stars like a fire that could not be stopped. The Galactic Council met on Nexus Station, a massive artificial world that floated at the center of known space. It was neutral territory, a place where the great powers could talk instead of fight. Representatives from 100 species filled the enormous chamber, their voices rising in a constant murmur of politics and trade. Nobody expected the humans to come. Humanity had a seat on the council, but they rarely used it. They were considered a minor power, too young and too weak to matter in the great games of galactic politics. When the human ambassador requested an emergency session, most delegates assumed it was some trivial complaint about trade routes or border disputes. They were wrong. Dawson walked into the chamber like she owned it. She was 52 years old, with silver streaks in her dark hair and eyes that had seen things that would break lesser beings. She had been a soldier before she became a diplomat, and she still moved like someone who knew how to kill. The chamber fell silent as she took her place at the speaking podium. Every eye watched her. Every translator crackled with anticipation. "I am here," said her voice calm and clear, "to address the situation at Prime." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The situation was considered closed. They would take the planet, they would become slaves, and life would go on. That was how the galaxy worked. "The Dominion has threatened to destroy the people," continued. "They have given them 72 hours to surrender or face extinction. This is genocide. This is evil, and this council has done nothing." The delegate, a massive creature named, rose from his seat. His scales were the color of dried blood, and his voice rumbled like thunder. "The humans speak out of turn," said. "The situation is an internal matter of the Dominion. It does not concern this council, and it certainly does not concern the humans." Turned to face him, her expression did not change. "The situation concerns humanity very much," she said. 40 years ago, a captain named risked his life to save 12,000 of our people. He asked for nothing in return. He simply helped because it was right." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Humanity has a long memory. We remember our enemies. We remember those who hurt us, who betrayed us, who looked down on us when we were weak. But we also remember our friends. We remember every kindness, every hand extended in help, every debt we owe." Laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Debt? You speak of debt. They are nothing. They have no power, no value, no importance. Why would any species throw away their future for such worthless creatures?" His eyes narrowed. For a moment, something dangerous flickered behind them. "Because that is who we are," she said softly. "We are the species that remembers. We are the species that pays what we owe. And we are the species that will burn the galaxy down before we let our friends die alone." She turned back to the council. "Humanity is formally announcing that we will intervene on behalf of the. Our fleet is already moving toward Prime. Any vessel that fires on the will be treated as an act of war against humanity." The chamber exploded into chaos. Delegates shouted over each other. Some laughed in disbelief. Others looked genuinely afraid. Pushed his way to the front of the chamber, his massive form casting a shadow over a smaller figure. "You are insane," he growled. "You have 40 warships. We have 800. Your entire species is a rounding error compared to the Dominion. We could crush you like insects." Looked up at him. She did not step back. She did not flinch. 40 years ago," she said, "a small ship called the Quiet Passage saved 12,000 humans. The captain was old and his crew was tired. They had no weapons, no power, no reason to help, but they came anyway. They risked everything for strangers." Her voice hardened. "That captain taught us something. He taught us that courage is not about being strong. It is about doing what is right, even when you are afraid, even when you are weak, even when the whole universe tells you that helping is pointless. She stepped closer too, her eyes blazing. So yes, maybe you have more ships, maybe you have more soldiers, maybe you will destroy us, but we are coming anyway. We are coming because we owe a debt, and humanity pays its debts. We are coming because they showed us what true courage looks like, and we will not dishonor their gift by abandoning them. Stared at her. For the first time, something like uncertainty crossed his face. You would die for them. You would sacrifice your entire species for a handful of worthless traitors. Smiled. It was the kind of smile that made warriors check their weapons. Let me tell you something about humanity, she said. When we are hurt, we remember. When we are betrayed, we remember. We carry our grudges across generations. We teach our children the names of those who wronged us. We wait years, decades, centuries if we have to, and then we take our revenge. She paused. But the same is true of kindness. When someone helps us, we remember that too. We carry gratitude in our hearts like a sacred fire. We teach our children the names of those who saved us. And when our friends are in danger, we come. No matter the cost, no matter the odds, we come. She turned away from and addressed the council one final time. They have 72 hours to withdraw from space. If they refuse, if a single dies, if a single building burns, we will come for them. Not just their fleet, not just their military. We will dismantle their entire civilization, piece by piece, until the name is nothing but a warning whispered to children. Laughed again, but this time the sound was forced, uncertain. You are bluffing, he said. No species would sacrifice themselves for another. It makes no sense. Looked back at him over her shoulder. That is because you do not understand us, she said. You see the universe as a place of competition and conquest. You believe that the strong must always prey on the weak. You cannot imagine doing something for no reward, no benefit, no advantage. She shook her head slowly. But we are different. We help our friends because they are our friends. We pay our debts because they are our debts. We die for strangers because that is what taught us to do. She walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the silent chamber. 72 hours, she said without turning around. Withdraw or face the consequences. Humanity does not bluff. Humanity does not forget. And humanity delegate does not forgive. The doors closed behind her. For a long moment nobody spoke. Then slowly the delegates began to whisper among themselves. Some were shocked. Some were frightened. Some, for the first time in centuries, felt something like hope. Because if one small species would risk everything for another, perhaps the galaxy was not as dark as they had believed. Perhaps kindness still mattered. Perhaps debts could still be paid. Far away, the human fleet continued its journey. 300 ships burning toward Prime, burning toward a battle they could not win. Burning because it was right. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a storm breaking over the horizon. 300 ships hung in the darkness above Prime. Battleships and cruisers, destroyers and carriers, frigates and gunboats. Every vessel humanity could spare, pulled from colonies and patrol routes and defensive positions that left Earth itself vulnerable. They had come from every corner of human space, racing against time, pushing their engines beyond safe limits. They had come because their government asked. They had come because their people demanded. They had come because humanity pays its debts, and this debt was 40 years overdue. Admiral Cole stood on the bridge of the battleship Relentless, watching the fleet on his tactical display. 800 ships faced him. Some were monsters, dreadnoughts bristling with weapons that could crack planets open. Others were smaller but no less deadly, designed for speed and brutality. The numbers were not in humanity's favor. They never had been. Beside stood an old named. She was daughter born 5 years after the Starbound Hope rescue. Her father had died when she was young, but she remembered his stories. She remembered the humans he had saved, the kindness he had shown, the hope he had carried. When the human fleet arrived, had wept. She had fallen to her knees and wept like a child, because after 72 hours of terror, after watching her people prepare to die, salvation had come from the most unexpected place. "They actually came," she had whispered. "They actually came." Now she stood on the bridge of a human warship, watching her through the viewport. Below, millions of looked up at the sky, seeing the human ships that had appeared like a miracle. "Admiral," said softly, "why are you doing this? Your ambassador spoke of debt, of memory, of gratitude, but this is more than gratitude. You are going to die for us." Looked at her. His face was hard, but his eyes were kind. 40 years ago," he said, "your father could have let 12,000 of our people die. Nobody would have blamed him. Nobody would have known. He could have protected himself, protected his crew, and flown away. But he didn't." He turned back to the viewport. "He saved us because it was right. He saved us because he believed that kindness mattered, that strangers were worth helping, that the universe didn't have to be cruel. He gave us a gift that day, not just our lives, but something more. He showed us what courage really looked like." His hands tightened on the railing. "So yes, we are going to die for you. Some of us anyway, maybe most of us. But we are going to show the galaxy what your father taught us. We are going to prove that his sacrifice was not wasted, that humanity learned, that we remember." The commander sent a message across all frequencies. His voice was filled with contempt. "Humans, you have made a terrible mistake. Withdraw now and we will allow you to leave with your lives. Stay, and you will share the fate of these worthless creatures." Picked up his communicator. "This is Admiral Cole of the Earth Fleet," he said. "Your threat has been received and rejected. They are under human protection. Any attack on them is an attack on us. You have 5 minutes to withdraw. After that, we open fire." Laughed. 5 minutes. You threaten us with 5 minutes. We have almost 3 times your numbers. You cannot win this battle. Smiled grimly. "Maybe not, but we can make you pay for every inch. We can hurt you so badly that your empire will never recover. We can turn this victory into a wound that bleeds for generations." He paused. "Or you can leave. Go home, find some other world to conquer, but not this one, not these people, not today." Silence stretched across the void, then spoke again. "So be it. Your species will die here, human, and when we are finished with you, we will burn Earth itself." The fleet began to move. Turned to his crew. "All ships," he said calmly, "battle stations, weapons free, show them what humanity is made of." The battle was savage. Commander Santos led the first attack, driving his squadron of fighters directly into the heart of the formation. They were outnumbered 10-1, but they flew like demons, weaving through enemy fire with impossible skill. "Stay on target," called to his pilots. "Focus on their flagship. Take out their command structure and the rest will fall apart." They lost 17 ships in the first 3 minutes. Watched his friends die, saw their names flash red on his display and kept flying. When a weapons platform targeted the Relentless, threw his own fighter into its path, destroying the platform with the force of his impact. His last words were a prayer: "Tell my daughter I love her." Lieutenant Torres commanded the cruiser Phoenix. When a torpedo ripped through her engineering section, she refused to abandon ship. Instead, she sealed herself in the damaged compartment and held the failing systems together with emergency repairs and sheer force of will. "I need 30 more minutes," she shouted into her communicator. "Just 30 minutes to get the crew off." She got them 35. By the time the last escape pod launched, was barely conscious, her hands burned from hot metal, her lungs filling with smoke. She died at her post, saving 400 lives. Captain Bradley commanded the destroyer Defiance. When his ship was crippled by enemy fire, he had 2 choices: surrender or die. He chose a third option. With engines failing and life support failing faster, aimed his broken ship at a carrier, and pushed the throttle to maximum. "All hands abandon ship," he ordered calmly. "I'll keep them busy." His crew argued. His first officer tried to physically drag him to the escape pods, but refused. "Someone has to fly this thing into them," he said, "and I'm not asking anyone else to die for my decision. Now go, that's an order." The Defiance hit the carrier at full speed. Both ships exploded in a fireball visible from the planet below. 1,600 died in that moment. Bradley died with them, taking his enemies with him into the dark. The battle raged for 6 hours. Humanity took terrible losses. Ship after ship went dark. Crew after crew made their final broadcasts, saying goodbye to families they would never see again. But they kept fighting. They kept dying. They kept proving that some things were worth more than survival. And slowly, impossibly, they began to break. They had expected an easy victory. They had expected humans to flee or surrender when the casualties mounted. They had never faced an enemy who simply refused to stop, who traded their lives for damage with cold determination, who seemed to welcome death as long as they could take their killers with them. By the 5th hour, they had lost 500 ships. Their flagship was a burning wreck. Their commander was dead, killed when a human missile penetrated his bridge. Their fleet was scattered, their formations broken, their confidence shattered. When they finally retreated, they left behind the corpses of their ships and the echoes of their screams. The galaxy's greatest military power had been driven from the field by a species they had dismissed as insects. Admiral Cole stood on his damaged bridge, watching the fleet flee into hyperspace. Beside him wept again, but this time her tears were tears of joy. Below them, on Prime, millions of voices raised in songs of gratitude. They sang for the humans who had come. They sang for the humans who had died. They sang for the debt that had finally been paid. Humanity had lost over 100 ships. Tens of thousands were dead. The cost was terrible. The price was high. But Prime stood. Its people lived. And the galaxy had learned something important about the small, young species called humanity. They remembered their friends. They paid their debts. And they never, ever gave up. The galaxy expected humanity to stop. They had won an impossible victory. They had saved the. They had driven the from the field. Surely now they would lick their wounds, mourn their dead, and return to their quiet corner of space. Surely they would be satisfied. The galaxy did not understand humanity at all. 2 days after the Battle of Prime, Admiral Cole received new orders from Earth. The message was simple and clear. Pursue the, no negotiations, no mercy, no stopping until the threat was eliminated. The human fleet, battered and bleeding but still alive, turned toward space and began to move. Dawson had warned them. She had stood before the Galactic Council and said exactly what would happen if they attacked the. She had promised to dismantle their civilization piece by piece. She had promised to make their name a warning whispered to children. Humanity kept its promises. The campaign lasted 18 months. It was not a war, it was a reckoning. Human ships appeared in space like ghosts, striking without warning and disappearing before they could respond. They destroyed military installations. They liberated conquered worlds. They hunted down war criminals and brought them to justice. They begged for peace. Humanity refused. "You were given a chance to leave," Cole said when the ambassador pleaded for negotiations. "You were given 72 hours to withdraw. You chose to fight. You chose to try to destroy an innocent species. Now you will face the consequences." "But this is madness," the ambassador cried. "We are willing to pay reparations. We are willing to free the. We are willing to do anything." Shook his head. 40 years ago, a captain saved our people. He asked for nothing in return. He simply helped because it was right. When we thanked him, he said he hoped that someday someone would show his people the same kindness. His voice hardened. "But you tried to destroy them. You threatened to erase their culture, enslave their children, wipe their very existence from the galaxy. You did not show them kindness. You showed them cruelty. And now you will learn what happens when humanity decides to punish those who hurt the people we love. The campaign continued. World by world, system by system, the Dominion crumbled. Species that had lived under their boot for centuries rose up in rebellion, sensing that their oppressors were finally weak. Allies abandoned wanting no part of humanity's wrath. The Galactic Council watched in stunned silence. Some delegates called for intervention. Others argued that the humans had gone too far, that their revenge was disproportionate, that they were becoming the monsters they claimed to fight. But nobody intervened, nobody dared. Because they had all seen what humanity did for its friends, and they all wondered, in the dark corners of their hearts, what humanity might do to its enemies. On Prime, the people watched the news with mixed feelings. They were grateful beyond words for what humanity had done, but they also grieved for the destruction, for the lives lost on both sides, for the cycle of violence that seemed to have no end. Spoke to the human ambassador, a young man named who had replaced Dawson after she returned to Earth. "We asked for help," said quietly. "We asked for protection. We did not ask for vengeance." Nodded slowly. "I understand," he said. "And maybe you're right. Maybe we went too far. Maybe we let our anger carry us beyond what was necessary." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But you have to understand something about us. When we were young and weak, the galaxy taught us harsh lessons. We learned that nobody would protect us. We learned that the strong would always prey on the weak. We learned that mercy was a weakness that got you killed." He looked out the window at the city below, rebuilt and thriving. "Then your father came. He showed us a different way. He showed us that kindness was possible, that helping strangers was worth the cost, that the universe didn't have to be cruel." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "But he also showed us what happens to the kind and the gentle in a galaxy full of predators. He showed us that good beings get targeted, get threatened, get destroyed. And we swore that we would never let that happen again. Not to anyone who showed us friendship." He turned back to, "So yes, maybe our revenge was too harsh. Maybe we became something terrible in our quest to protect something beautiful. But we'll never threaten you again. No one will ever threaten you again. Because every species in this galaxy now knows the price of harming humanity's friends." Was silent for a long moment. "My father," she said finally, "believed that kindness could change the universe. He believed that one small act of help could ripple outward forever, touching lives in ways we could never imagine." She smiled sadly. "I think he was right, but I don't think he imagined that kindness would lead to this, to war and death and the destruction of an empire. I don't think he wanted his gift to become a weapon." Nodded. "No," he agreed. "He probably didn't. But that's the thing about gifts. Once you give them, you can't control what happens next. You can only hope that the person who receives them uses them wisely." When the campaign ended, the Dominion no longer existed. Its territory was divided among the species it had once oppressed. Its leaders faced trial for their crimes. Its military was dissolved. Its name became exactly what Dawson had promised it would become. A warning, a lesson, a story told to children about what happened to those who threatened the friends of humanity. Admiral Cole returned to Earth a hero, but he refused the celebrations. He visited the memorial that had been built for the fallen, reading each name carved into the black stone. Tens of thousands of names, tens of thousands of lives given so that they could live. When reporters asked him why humanity had sacrificed so much for a species most had never heard of, he gave a simple answer. Because 40 years ago a captain could have looked away. He could have protected his own people by ignoring ours. He didn't. He risked everything for strangers. He paused, his voice heavy with the weight of all they had lost and all they had proven. That's what humanity learned from the kindness matters, debts matter, and if the galaxy wants to know what kind of species we are, we're the kind that remembers. On Prime, a monument was built. It stood in the capital city, visible from anywhere on the planet. The monument depicted a human hand clasped with an appendage, reaching toward each other across a field of stars. Beneath it, an inscription was carved in both languages. A favor given is a bond forged. Humanity never forgets. The galaxy took notice. Species that had once dismissed humanity as insignificant began sending ambassadors, offering friendship, hoping to earn the loyalty of a people who would cross the stars to honor a debt. Trade agreements were signed. Alliances were formed. Humanity's place in galactic society was secured not by conquest, but by trust. And species that had once preyed upon the weak, they learned to be afraid. Because humanity remembered everything, every slight, every kindness, every friend and every enemy. They remembered the starward hope drifting helplessly in the void. They remembered an old captain who risked everything for strangers. They remembered a promise made in the dark, that someday, somehow, the debt would be repaid. They had paid it in full, with blood and fire and tears, with sacrifice and courage and unyielding determination. And now the galaxy knew the truth about the young species called humanity. They never overlooked a favor, and their retribution could shake worlds.